What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Philip Lindsay Appreciation Podcast. I am Stephen Priest. On the other side is Hate So Much Brandon Stoll. We have now changed the name. We agreed. This will now be the Philip Lindsay Appreciation Podcast. It is no longer behind the glass, so we need to change the graphics. Can you stop swerving me around, please, for 10 seconds? I'm trying to tell the people how sad I am. You listen, what was that, Thursday? Wednesday or Thursday? That was a rough day for me. Okay?
You don't even know what day it
was broken. That's how devastated I was. Everything went out of my mind. I lost all track of reality. But we got a lot of Broncos to talk about today. You can see on the title, Brandon doesn't know how to spell. Goodbye is one word, and Lindsay has an A in his name. So I don't know how Brandon got to college, but he got there somehow.
I know how I got through it.
Yeah. Well, that's true too.
You were the same way, so don't even.
Yeah. I'm surprised I wasn't late to my graduation ceremony. So I'm surprised I wasn't late to walking up onto the stage to get my diploma. Is that what it called? Diploma? Degree.
Yes. Well,
diploma is the high school one. I guess the same thing, right?
Isn't it the same thing?
The same thing.
Okay. Well,
both a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Regardless,
really mean anything.
I digress. We got a lot of Broncos to get to today. Obviously, Philip Lindsay being let go. What does that mean? Was it a mistake? Was it not a mistake? We'll talk about, Von Miller, option getting picked up. Kareem Jackson possibly not coming back. Justin Simmons coming back on a deal. The Denver Broncos signed Kyle and Lyle Fuller, according to Mike Kliss, which I loved. It's like Cliff and Chris Paul. So we'll talk about that. Deshaun Watson. I don't know if that might be happening anytime soon, given all the new news with that. But we got a lot to get to.
Also, we have a new NBA MVP favorite.
I did see that, and we can talk about that as well. Oh, speaking of, because can you read this? Nikola Jokic, best basketball player in the world T-shirt. It was specifically made for me. No, it wasn't. But shout out to Triple B Printing. If you guys would like to cop this shirt, I suggest you do it. I felt like it was completely made for me. But anyways, we got to talk about the ending of the Nuggets Bulls game the other night, because that was just, first off, why do the Denver Nuggets? It's like that meme, where the guy's walking with his girlfriend and he's turning around and he's like, ooh, looking back at the other girl. Like, the guy with his girlfriend, the girl to his right is the Nuggets beating up on bad Eastern Conference teams. And then the girl looking backwards, it's the Nuggets looking at getting blown out by Eastern Conference teams. Every single year, the Denver Nuggets just want to desperately be swept by like 2 or 3 Eastern Conference teams. Terrible teams. If it's not the Wizards, the Bulls, the Cavs, they're just like, yes. Who will it be next year? The Magic? Who's another bad? The Hornets? I mean, they were tied with the Hornets for like the first 2 quarters, I think it was, or maybe like the first quarter. But they just cannot help themselves. But anyways, they get through. I mean, at one point, I think they were down 12 or 14, probably 20, I think. But they come back through that in the fourth quarter. Jamal Murray was insane. Nikola Jokic, another near triple-double, missed out on 1 assist. Of course, nobody else can knock down a shot when he needs it. But really the story was Jamal Murray and his insane play. He had that 2-3 game stretch where it was like, after the All-Star break, where it's like, oh boy, here we go again. But I was surprised to see him come out and say he didn't even touch a basketball during the All-Star break. He was mentally exhausted. And I'm like, part of me is like, that's a little bit concerning. But the other part of me, now you kind of understand the ebbs and flows, I guess, with Jamal. At least this season. He comes into the season, starts slow. We know he was angry about starting the season so quickly, and then it just shows you he hits that stretch. He's exhausted. He doesn't even want to touch a basketball during the All-Star break. No shocker that he comes back and he's got 2 or 3 rough games. And then he comes back the last few games and he's played really well. And he's shooting super good from the 3 too. But his night was insane. I think the Nuggets are really turning into a team, and tell me if you feel this way as well. I feel like they're hitting a point to where they think they can just kind of mess around for a few quarters because they know that they're good enough at the end of the game to come back and win the game and make the plays necessary to win the game. Because earlier in the year, they were losing these close games. Now this is looking like last year, where coming down the stretch, they're hitting tough shots, and it seems inevitable at times with Murray, Jokic, and then Michael Porter.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue that the Denver Nuggets have three of not only the toughest shot makers in the league, but three guys who do not care about the moment. They will shoot it whenever, however.
Well, they have four of those guys, but one you just don't want to take those shots, and that's Will Barton.
Who? Oh, well, yeah.
But Will's not afraid either. Will's not afraid either. So.
And
by the way, he's playing great. So I want to get that out there. Like, you know,
yes,
against Chicago, 16-6-3. He's playing really well. He's shooting the ball really well. He was 1 of 8 from 3. But yeah, they have 4 guys who aren't afraid. But that's the difference, though, is Jamal Murray. That's why they're winning these games. It's that simple. Jokic can only do so much. Early on the season, he could only do so much. But when Jamal Murray is playing like this, which he has been, other than maybe 1 or 2 games over the last 20 games, or maybe like 15 games, it's hard to beat a team when you have 2 guys playing at that level, let alone 3. Because Michael Porter he was 1 of 5 from 3. So not shooting the ball great from behind the arc, but I mean, if he hit 2 of those, you know, he has 25 points. So,
well, he still comes away with 19 and I think 10 boards.
19-6. But hey, he had 2 assists. So, something that you normally don't see. He also had a plus 12 in the plus minus. By the way, I just want to throw it out there that Paul Millsap had a minus 13 in 18 minutes. So, yikes. But those 3 guys right there, when you have 3 guys like that, especially Jokic and Jamal, you can wait till the 4th quarter to start playing. I mean, it's like the Lakers. They do it all the time when they have AD and LeBron out there. So it's not like when you have 2 guys that are not only that good, all-star caliber. One is an MVP candidate and probably the favorite at this point, but you have 2 of the most clutch players in the NBA. Jamal Murray can hit all the clutch tough shots, like you said, right? One of the best tough shot makers in the league. And Jokic, he's been top 3 in most clutch player since I guess he started playing really well. Last 4 years he's been one of the top 3,
if not the best.
If not the best. So when you have 2 guys that are playing like that, there is no lead that really is safe, because especially the way they play their 2-man game, they can turn the game into a 2-on-2. And if you can do that with their clutch ability, you can't do much. And that's why when we talk about when it comes down to the playoffs, it's not about the depth that you have. It's about your top 3, top 4 guys. And if your top 2 are putting together 68 points, 17 rebounds, 14 assists, 6 steals, a block, shooting 26 of 46, that's almost impossible to beat when it comes down to the playoffs.
Well, and how many teams is their 3rd guy better than Michael Porter?
Right.
That's what it's really going to come down to.
Yeah. Well, and then Will Barton, the way he's playing, if he keeps this going, they got a 4th guy. We were just talking about they need a 4th guy. Will can be that guy. We know he can because we saw it 2 years ago. He was the 3rd guy, if not the 2nd guy on that team.
And you can swap him out with Monte, too, on some nights.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Monte's good for 10 to 12 a night.
Yeah. So I don't know. At this point, I guess we're back to, well, I guess let's see and wait to see what this team does and not make any big moves. I don't know, though. I mean, Paul Millsap is brutal. I just feel like you need to find someone to really take on that power forward spot. When Monte comes back, I would like to see MPJ go back to the power forward spot. Maybe that's what they're doing. And go ahead and move Monte back into the starting lineup. Because PJ Dozier is playing really well. He's not putting up numbers, but he's playing well. And then Campazzo.
Has
Campazzo
he
had 8
really
assists.
Yeah, has he really made and speaking of PJ specifically, has he really made Gary Harris's job expendable? Like Gary Harris, the player.
Uh, maybe. I
Because
still
where does Gary fit now?
just special defensive assignments. So
Sure,
if
but I
you're
mean as far
playing,
as minutes wise, who are you playing Gary more than that's playing right now?
well, I would
That's what
say
I'm coming at.
come playoff time, Zeke Naji or Campazzo, because Campazzo got 34 minutes. So what I'm saying is, if you say let's say they run into Portland in the first round, you're gonna need someone to stop or at least slow down Dame.
Or Utah.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll end up in a matchup with Utah in the first round, or in the second round, a team against Utah, right? Where if they even get there, where you need someone to go one-on-one with Donovan Mitchell. And we saw it made all the difference a year ago with Gary Harris. So I think that's the only time where I would say Gary needs to be in there, because we saw it in the playoffs last season. He was probably the second most valuable player in that series, right behind Jamal. I mean, he made the difference. He was the reason why they came back from 3-1. Yes, Jamal put up 50, 50, and 40, but Gary Harris's defense was huge, and he made the play in Game 7. We talked about it in our last podcast. So
Yep.
that's where I wouldn't trade Gary Harris, because those special defensive assignments I like, and I will switch him out with, say, Campazzo or Zeke Naji or whatever. So, or even a Paul Millsap. Maybe Paul Millsap doesn't play in one of those series, because this rotation is going to go down to probably 8. So if MPJ, Jokic, and Jamal are going to get 42 minutes a game, and Will is going to get 41, then you're not really going to lower any of those minutes as long as Will is playing well. So at that point, I think I start Monte instead. PJ Dozier can be your backup point guard easily. Campazzo if you want in certain situations. And then you have Jermichael Green and Gary Harris. Now that's 9, so you got to figure out, if you are going to go 8, who's going to be the odd man out of that group. And it just depends on matchups. If you don't like Campazzo in that matchup, then switch him out for Gary. If you don't like PJ Dozier, you feel like that Dozier is doing the same thing as Gary, and you don't need that, then switch them out. But I think I like that versatility with Dozier and Gary both coming off the bench, because they can guard multiple positions. So that's what I would do. I wish Zeke Naji could get more minutes, because he's playing really well. I really like Zeke Naji. He is driving me nuts with constantly seeing 0 or 1 rebounds at 6'10". That's driving me nuts. But I mean, he's a really good player. I mean, he's a guy that he could have one of those playoff games that he hits 3 or 4 threes, and that kind of puts him over the top. So when you talk about this team as far as depth, yeah, they don't have a ton of depth, but they're 8 or 9 guys. They're more than good enough. So I would take Paul Millsap out. I wouldn't play him anymore. I would actually give Zeke Naji those minutes and Jermichael Green, and then go Dozier and Gary Harris when it comes down to the playoffs. That's what I would do.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think when it comes to Campazzo, Paul, Hartenstein to an extent, maybe even Gary. Like once you get past Jokic, Murray, MPJ, Will Barton, Monte, Jermichael, and I'll say PJ Dozier's the 7th guy. Once you get past those 7, then it's just going to be solely matchup based.
Right.
And if a guy's hot a certain night, that's when it's maybe it's Campazzo. If there's foul trouble, okay, maybe Paul's in there. Hartenstein if things are really desperate and they need length or size, excuse me. But when you look at this team, it's just they just love going on ebbs and flows and roller coasters. And beginning of the year, yes, they didn't have a lot of the players and injury, and you make the argument now that Jamal just wasn't there mentally, and I'm still kind of concerned because I don't know where he's going to be at mentally down this stretch.
Well, I think see, and that's where I trust him. I trust him down
Well,
at least in the playoffs. Maybe not.
well, yeah, but part
down,
of me wonders if Michael Malone should give him some rest as we get
well,
closer.
you know Jamal won't take that.
But I mean, if they're getting to points where there's breaks in the action and he's so exhausted that he doesn't want to touch a basketball, if you're going to come down this home stretch, wouldn't you want him to be rested and ready mentally come playoff time? I don't know. I think it's something to think about.
Maybe this year specifically. I don't think we'll have that issue in the future. I think it was just a short off season, and
Sure,
so he
and
used
that's what I'm saying.
he
he
used the All-Star break as a second little off season. But yeah, I mean, maybe down the stretch. I'll say this though: it depends on playoff positioning because all of a sudden, don't look now, but the 1 seed is open for the Nuggets. They are only 5 games back. Utah's lost, or they are 5-5 in their last 10. The Lakers do not have Anthony Davis or LeBron James. The Clippers are 4-6 in their last 10, and the Phoenix is up and down. All of a sudden, that 1 seed is wide open, and if Denver wants it, they can go get it, or at least a 2 seed. If Utah figures it out and starts winning games again, then they might hold on to the 1 seed. But that 2 seed is wide open because they're only 2.5 games behind the 2 seed. So
yeah,
what do you
I'd
want?
say 3 through 4 or 2 through 4 is more realistic. I don't think Utah's gonna. I mean, they'd have to. Really...
I mean, they're 5-5, and they
Sure.
lost 2 before they won. I think last night.
What's their schedule look like? I don't think they'll lose hold. I mean, I think it'll be close, but I don't think they'll lose hold of it. I really do think 2 through 4 is definitely realistic. Like you mentioned with LeBron and AD being out, and LeBron is expected to miss weeks. I mean, at this point, if you're the Lakers, I think you this is about playoffs for you. This isn't about seeding. They could care less about where they're seated. So I think they'll be fine to just take it super slow with those guys. I'm looking at Utah's schedule. They're Chicago, that should be a win. Brooklyn,
Well, Chicago's
probably a
playing well.
loss.
To be fair, Chicago is playing really well. They're one of
They
the
are.
they're one of the best bad teams.
I mean, they could push you if you overlook them.
Yeah.
But I don't think they'll lose that game. Brooklyn, that's a toss-up. I would say Brooklyn is probably favored there, but I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, depending on Kevin Durant played, wouldn't be shocked if they won that game. Then they have 2 against Memphis. Those should be 2 wins. Cleveland and Memphis. So they have a 4-game stretch, 6-game stretch. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 7 of their next 8 games is Chicago, Memphis 3 times, Cleveland, Chicago again, and Orlando. So don't be surprised if they go on a run here if they're not 7-1.
Well, but then all of a sudden you got Dallas, Phoenix, Portland in 3 straight games.
But those are all very winnable games for them as well. Like Dallas,
they are.
I think for all of those games, I would pick Utah to be the favorite. Now they could. I wouldn't be shocked if they lost 1, 2, or even all 3 of those games. But I don't think they'll forego that 1 seed. I mean, after that, I mean they do have 2 with the Lakers again. They have Phoenix one more time. San Antonio, who's been tough this year. They have the Nuggets one more time. Golden State, Portland. So maybe I think the lowest they drop is 2. If things just implode, 3.
Right.
But I don't think they'll hop out of that 1.
If they drop to 2, or even 3, it would take one of the 2 teams right behind them to go on a massive win streak, which Denver can do. We've seen them do it. So it's not impossible with that 1 seed, but the 2 seed is definitely up for grabs. Now for the Nuggets though, do we care? Do we care what seed they are? Because we've seen in the past, the seeding does not matter. Now, if you're trying to avoid a team like the Lakers in the playoffs, until the Western Conference, then at that point maybe it's like, okay, the Lakers are the 3 seed right now, depending on where they drop because of LeBron and AD being out. They could be in that 4 or 5. So maybe you do want to avoid that 4 and 5. You want to get up to that 2 or 3 spot, right? Best case scenario goes Utah, Phoenix, Denver, and then the Clippers and the Lakers have to play in the 4 and 5. Could you imagine if the Clippers and the Lakers have to play each other in the first round? That's huge. That is, and you could get on that opposite side, and so all of a sudden, then either the Lakers, Clippers move on to play Utah in the second round, and you get in the first round you get, say, San Antonio, and then in the second round you get Phoenix. I'll take that. So seeding is gonna matter.
Those are both tough series.
But
could
right.
easily lose those.
Well, yes, but I'll take that over having to play the Clippers or the Lakers in the second round, or even in the first round. So if you can bump up to get up to that second seed, and the Lakers, and you hope that the Lakers and Clippers fall to 4 and 5, that'd be amazing. Now I don't know if the Clippers fall or stay at 4 or fall to 5. I don't know. The Lakers could easily fall to 4 or 5 because of injuries. I think the Clippers will probably, those last 10 games, will probably say, okay, we're going to win these last 10 games to avoid having to play the Lakers. So it might be, Phoenix dropping or whatever. But there's a scenario where all of a sudden the Lakers and Clippers are playing in the first round, and it's like, okay, we need to get to 2 or 3. We don't want the 1 seed. So it depends. But I think really those are the only 2 teams, if I'm Denver, that I'm absolutely avoiding. And maybe Portland, if Portland gets healthy. That's another team that I'm not sure I would want to see in the playoffs as long as they're healthy. But other than that, I mean, Dallas is a tough 8 seed. That's one of the toughest 8 seeds ever. I think the preferred team to play in the first round would be San Antonio. If you could play San Antonio in the first round, because I think Denver matches up well against them. I think that's the one team that Denver's like, okay, we match up well against them. They don't have a stop for anyone, at least with Jamal and Jokic. So I think that's probably the team that you would kind of hope for if you're the Nuggets. And then in the second round, it's hoping that you somehow avoid both LA teams.
Yeah. San Antonio did kick the Nuggets in the head, though, the last time they played.
Yeah.
They completely bullied the Nuggets. But I agree. Yes, if there's one team you'd want to play, this is assuming they get to the 2 or 3 spot. Of course, you'd want San Antonio. The Dallas matchup is just weird.
It is.
It just I feel like they beat Dallas in a series, but it's just weird for the Nuggets.
If it's Utah and Dallas, I'm telling you, I would not be shocked. Would not be shocked if Dallas won that series. Because that's actually a decent matchup for Dallas. That's not bad. Like, if I'm Dallas and I'm stuck at the 8 seed, I'm like, all right, well, I'll take Utah or Phoenix. Mm-hmm. Right? So
yeah, no. If you're Dallas and that's where you're gonna live, is that 7 or 8, then you want Phoenix or Utah. Yeah. You don't want the Lakers or Clippers. You
or
don't
the Nuggets.
Lakers
or the Nuggets. Now,
the reason I'm comfortable playing the Nuggets.
The reason why I've kind of changed my mind on Dallas playing Nuggets is just because they don't have a stop for Jokic. If I'm an 8 seed or a 7 seed, I don't want to play the MVP. So, it's pretty much that simple. And Jamal, and we all know what Jamal does in the playoffs. That's tough. Now the Nuggets will make it hard on themselves, and that's where the Nuggets do it to themselves. But at this point, maybe it's something that they've learned. That they've the last 2 years in the playoffs, it's 7-game series. They don't know anything else.
My heart cannot take.
They literally do not know anything else. I think this year is a big year where they're going to start to figure things out as far as at least in the first round. Like, okay, we're not going to screw around here. We know it's screwed us. We've screwed ourselves over the last 2 years with going to these game 7s. Let's end this thing in 5. And I think they're going to be a little bit more motivated. So I'm avoiding the Nuggets as well. If you're, if the Nuggets are bumping up to that 1, 2, or 3, if I'm the 6, 7, 8, I'm like, okay, let's play Utah or let's play Phoenix. Let's not play the MVP Nikola Jokic and the MVP of the bubble Jamal Murray. We're not gonna do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I agree. And that was one of my keys too. It's funny that you bring that up. That was one of my keys going into the season. Was did the Nuggets learn from last year? And we're gonna find out in the playoffs. But did they learn that okay, you can't start a series slow, and when you have a team down in the series, you have to put your foot on their neck and take care of business. Now it's good, I guess, in a sense that you're going through these 7-game series because now you learn how to win those types of series. You learn to win in the biggest moments on the biggest stages, but then you tire yourself out. So by the time you get to the next series, now you have to muster up energy to get up for that. Well, not get up, but try and stay with the next opponent.
Well,
you're hurting yourself in a sense.
I mean, look at last year. They gave up a game in each series against both LA teams. The game 1 because they were so exhausted from the previous series that they literally just gave them a game. Like, luckily you beat the Clippers somehow. I still can't believe that they did that. But you essentially put yourself at a position where you had no shot against the Lakers because you gave them a game already. You can't give you can't give LeBron James a game. You're telling me that LeBron only has to win 3 games in a 7-game series? Are you serious? He can do that easily. By himself, he didn't even need AD. So you can't just give them a game. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see if they learned from that mistake for 2 straight years. But
I think you make a great point too that you've seen what the Nuggets do in the playoffs. Well, you saw what Jokic has done the past 2 playoffs. Okay, he definitely rises to the occasion, and he's an MVP.
Yeah.
You saw Jamal play well in his first playoffs, and then you saw him completely explode last year in the bubble. So it's like, okay, and then now if MPJ is really taking that next step, and he's anywhere from 17 to 20 points, if not on some nights, he's the second leading scorer, and Jamal or Jokic is 20 or 18 points, then it's like, all right, now I'm looking at the standings. Is Utah, is their top 3, which is Bogdanovich, Mitchell, and Gobert, is that better than Denver?
They don't even have one. I'm sorry.
Well, right. Is Phoenix?
No.
Is Phoenix's 3? So I guess it would be Ayton, Devin Booker, and Chris Paul. Is that better than Jokic, Jamal, MPJ? Now LA, I mean, they're 2. They're better than the Nuggets' first 2, but who's their 3 after that? Is it KCP? Is he better than MPJ? And we know that Jamal and Jokic can cancel out AD and LeBron.
Right.
So then it's okay. Is it Kuzma? Is it KCP? Who is it? Then you go to the Clippers. Okay, outside of Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, who's the next guy? Because now you're getting to a point with the Nuggets that okay, who can beat out MPJ? Because we always said Jokic will get them to the playoffs. That's easy. He's going to get them there.
And Jamal can match the big 2s.
Yeah, and Jamal had to needs to reach his level for them to take a next step. Now for them to reach the pinnacle, then it's like, okay, now MPJ has to be the 3rd guy. Well, now he's starting to look like the 3rd guy. So now you're looking at, okay, now I'm going through each team, and now I'm getting to Portland. Okay, Dame, CJ.
That's the scary team. Again, if they get healthy, but look, if they get healthy, they scare me more than the Clippers. I don't know if they scare me more than the Lakers. As long as they're shooting. If because Dame is, I can argue Dame is more dangerous than either Kawhi and Paul George. He can light you up for 50 more likely than those 2.
Sure, but the other 2 guys,
which is 20. But the difference is with just 20 shots. Like that's the thing. Dame can beat you by himself. Kawhi
can.
Kawhi can, but he hasn't. Look, they don't do it as often.
Guys do it on the other end too. I think you're discounting that. They do it on the other end as well.
True, but what I'm saying is the shooting alone, the 3-point shooting, that can kill you. Just like Steph can do it. So that's the difference is if they're healthy, they have not just Dame, but CJ can do it. Nurkic is a really good center when healthy. Like they have, and then not to mention all of the shooters that they've put around those guys. So to me, they have a team where maybe their top two I'm not more afraid of than the Clippers or the Lakers. But as far as their shooting ability as a team, with a really good center that does seem to bother Jokic once in a while, that scares me. So it's the Clippers, the Lakers, and the Blazers, I would say, are the top three as far as what teams in the Western Conference scare me the most. And I'll throw Golden State in there as well. Because of their shooting. Now, they might not make the playoffs, and I'm not nearly as scared of them as I am Portland and the two LA teams. But, I mean, their shooting ability, yeah. They can – that's the thing with Utah, Phoenix, San Antonio, and even Dallas is they don't have – they just don't have as many weapons in my mind as those other three teams.
I mean, Utah is pretty stacked. They're the new Nuggets, right? They're the depth team.
But as far as their top two guys don't get it done. So they might have the shooters around them, but they don't have Rudy Gobert doesn't scare me whatsoever. Donovan Mitchell does. But I already know that I have three players that can match Donovan Mitchell.
Right. Well, and that's the ultimate point, though. Is like you go through the 8 teams right now, and how many of those teams have a 3 that is better? Now there's a couple teams that have the 2 that's better than the Nuggets' top 2, but it's not like there's not space.
Right. They can cancel out
space. It's close. I'd even argue I'd take Nikola Jokic over Paul George. So then at that point, am I taking Paul George over Jamal Murray?
Yeah.
I think
no.
Push at this point.
It's a push. If you get playoff Jamal, that's a push.
Hey, don't discount playoff P.
Yeah,
right?
We've seen that side of the backboard.
All right, that ball that's coming right for you. You better look out. All right, but no, when you look at all the teams, and I look at Golden State, and part of me just as not speaking as a Nuggets fan, but just as an NBA fan. I really wish Clay was healthy.
Yeah.
Because I would really wanted to see it should be Golden State in there. San Antonio's a nice story, but it should be Golden State.
Mm-hmm.
And oh man, a playoff with those guys. I hope we get 1 or 2 really good more runs out of Golden State because it's coming closely. And Draymond is. I mean, listen, Draymond wasn't some all-world offensive player to begin with early in his career, but he's not what he used to be. So I think they got a couple more runs in him. And, I saw that video the other day of Klay Thompson shooting, and it's easy for that guy. I mean, we talk about how Steph's shot is just effortless. Clay makes it cleffortless. So, I mean, his shot is just beautiful as well. But I think the Nuggets, going back to the conversation, I think 3 is definitely doable. 2 might be tough. I mean, but they're only 2 games back.
Yeah,
so.
Well, 2 and 3 are tied. So it's
2 is in play. I don't think they'll get to 1, but I think they'll probably end up finishing around 3 or 4. When it's all said and done, they'll probably be 3, lowest probably 4. I think one of the LA teams is going to be in that 5-6 hole. And it's just which one is it going to be? Yeah. Is it going to be the Lakers because of injury and they're taking it easy up to the playoffs? Or is it going to be the Clippers because it seems like they're running into that inconsistency issue? They asked Kawhi about that, and he said it's kind of concerning how inconsistent they are. And, Doc is somewhere look, it wasn't me. It's this team. And it really, I think you have to look at the best player. I think it's a lot to say about Kawhi.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to be a fun playoff stretch. As we're coming down to it, it's going to be a fun playoffs. If I had to choose, obviously San Antonio would be the desired one, but I don't want to see any of these teams. I don't think any of these teams want to see each other, really. The West is just a gauntlet.
I think a lot of teams are kind of we want Utah. I think that's, and
yeah.
I unfortunately and I would say Utah and Phoenix because they seem to be the two kind of.
They're the two. They have an outlier feel.
Right.
It's a fluke type of feel.
Right.
Not to say that they're not good basketball teams, but Phoenix is still so young.
Mm-hmm. Which is funny because Denver was that team a year ago, 2 years ago.
Sure.
They were
Yeah,
easily
when
that
they had
team.
weren't they the 1 seed the year that they got the Blazers?
They were two. They were two back-to-back years.
Okay, but they were a 1 seed for quite some time,
Yeah,
and that was the
yeah.
deal. It's like, it's Denver, it's a fluke.
Mhm.
Well, now everybody's like, okay, well, Denver has two or three guys where it's like, okay, you got to really worry about them. With Utah, it's like, yeah, they're a good basketball team, but can we really believe in them? Phoenix, I just think it's a youth issue. I think
Yeah.
they're a good basketball team. I just
Mhm.
think they're young.
Right.
But I mean, the pickup of Torrey Craig out there to pair him with Jay Crowder, they could really play some excellent defense in the
Yeah.
playoff.
Well, I'd rather see Utah than Phoenix.
Yeah.
And
I think
and
they're
a
both
lot
super
a,
game series,
a lot
regardless.
for Phoenix is DeAndre Ayton, because in the playoffs I think you'll see Booker elevate his game. Chris Paul will. They got veteran 3-and-D guys. It's really on DeAndre Ayton. Like that's the one thing. It's like if he can get up to 18 and 10.
He's like what we were asking of Jamal.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
if you could just be this.
right,
We know that this guy's gonna do this. Could you just be here?
right.
And he just, I mean, if you look, have you looked at Aiton's stats?
It's been rough. I think over the last I saw a tweet. Yeah, it's like 13-7 over the last 10 games. I'm like, eee.
I mean, he's at 14-11 on the year, which for a guy like of his physical ability, um,
He's
in
been
his
inconsistent
stature,
though. That's the problem. Like when you
right?
like 14-11, okay. I mean, I'll take that as a third guy. That's not bad. If
And
he
he
can,
averaged 13-7. This month he's averaging
yeah,
13-7.
this month that's where I saw it. This month he's averaging 13-7.
Then
That's
he's at
not good.
15-11 last month.
So I'm saying if he can get up to 18-10,
Yeah.
18-10, I think it would be the sweet spot for him in the
Yeah,
playoffs.
January was his best month at 16-13.
Hmm.
And then it just kind of took a nosedive from there.
Now, I think Phoenix has to do a little bit of a better job of getting him the ball. It is kind of hard when you got Devin Booker, Chris Paul, and they're controlling the ball so much. But when you have Chris Paul, we've seen it in so many situations where when he has a good center or even just an average center, he can elevate that player to like Tyson Chandler was one of those guys. DeAndre Jordan was one of those guys, and they were averaging 18-10. Probably. So, look, DeAndre Ayton's he needs to get going, but I think they need to do a slightly better job of getting him going as well. Getting more pick and rolls with Chris Paul, and I think the hard part is you have Devin Booker, and Devin Booker controls the ball a lot. He needs the ball in his hands, so that makes it a little bit difficult.
It's going to be a fun playoff stretch, and I'm excited for it. There's only what are we at? The Nuggets are 25 and 16? So what is that? 41 games,
Mm-hmm.
and there's 72. So you got another 31 games left that we're coming down the stretch of. So it's going to be a fun stretch of playoff basketball. Now it just depends on who they can get in the first and second round mainly, because I think the Nuggets, they should get past the first round. Now when you get to the second round, that's a different story.
It depends on who you get.
You might have to play one of the LA teams, which not ideal, but not impossible either. The Lakers aren't the same team from last year, at least in my opinion. They're not. They're still really.
And look, there's a chance they might not get AD back. There's that. Now they're gonna. What I'm saying is, when they bring him back, he can easily get re-injured.
Sure. Well, and I mean, you got to account for Russ too, right? Like he's got to get back into it. When they get him into the playoffs, they're not just be like, all right, 40 minutes. Right. He's going to be on a minute restriction, which is why I think they'll probably try and hopefully get him back, in the last 10 games. And
I believe he has the same injury that KD had, right? And then he came back and then tore his Achilles.
I think his is a calf, or he might actually have like a Achilles, like specifically.
Okay, because I know KD had a calf strain, I believe is what it was.
I think AD's injury is actually to the Achilles.
Okay,
but I'm not sure. I mean, those ones, anytime you're talking about that area right there, you better be careful because it's one step And there's really no science to it. Like it just for some reason sometimes it just goes.
Yeah. It
And
might be a situation where it's about to go and they just need to time it right. you know, it can because I think it's just one of those things where it's like it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. So whether it's this
uh,
season in the playoffs, next season, it's going to happen to AD.
hopefully not.
I mean,
Goodness.
hopefully not, but I think it's just one of those things with the Achilles where it's
Putting down
that's
and
what it feels
playing.
like. Well, that's what it feels like though, and that's kind of what
He's
it felt like with KD. It was
he's been
like
playing
it's a
injured
matter
for a
of
while.
when. Yeah, but with those type of players, and when you start to get injuries down there, I think
Yeah.
it is more of a matter of when, not if.
Right. And maybe he's getting to the point in his career to where it's like, okay, I mean, AD's already really skilled, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see him rely more on that in the shooting
Mm-hmm.
rather than the explosive dunking.
Right.
Now, I wouldn't say AD's like a dunking big man, like he does, but I would say he's more known for his skill and shooting ability, and that type of stuff rather than his forcefulness around the basket. But it's gonna be fun. I can't wait for the playoffs. We got a huge stretch there. We did an hour on Nuggets. It just flies by with the Nuggets. So we might have to just separate the podcast. Maybe I'll upload two different ones, one Nuggets version, one Broncos version. But let's get to the Broncos one. They haven't given us a lot to talk about this offseason. Finally, they give us something to talk about. Where do you want to start? You want to do Phil first? You want to do Vaughn,
I mean, we
Kareem?
could just go down the list,
Okay,
go in
well, let's start
order.
with the Broncos. Gave the original tender to Philip Lindsay,
Which was nothing.
uh, which I think would have paid him around like 2.5 or something like that. Um, and then once they brought in Mike Boone, I think it is from the Vikings, I think that was the signal like we don't really want you here. And the Nuggets painted or Nuggets, the Broncos painted as something like, oh, we took the tender off of Phil so we could do right by Phil. No, they've been disrespecting him from day one. John Elway told him he was going to draft him. He ends up taking, I think it was David Williams in the 7th round. They don't draft Philip Lindsay. David Williams is nowhere in the league anymore. Philip Lindsay is a Pro Bowl back, rushes for 1,000 yards in his first 2 years. And he's a productive player. Now, I think a lot of it, like I do love Philip Lindsay, but I'm not going to sit here and say that Philip Lindsay's a top 10 back in the league or a top 5 back. I think Philip Lindsay is a really good player, though, who, if used right and in the right system, he could be an impact player on your team.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on how you use him, where you use. Like if he went to a Kansas City,
Right.
a Baltimore, a place like that, I think those teams would find ways to use him and utilize his skills a la Darren Sproles when he was with Philly and New Orleans and San Diego. Well, now LA, but like that's how you have to use Philip Lindsay. Now, I don't think he's a bell cow, but he showed you that as the bell cow, he can be an 1,000-yard rusher. Now he did have some injury issues, but I saw Ryan Koenigsberg of DNVR tweeted out Philip Lindsay played in 42 of a possible 48 games in his career. So yes, injuries were a thing, but it wasn't something where it knocked him out completely. At the end of the day, it sucks to see him go because I think the Broncos lost a good football player, but he just wasn't a fit with what Shermer wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
It was just always felt like the Broncos never really truly believed in Phil, and I think that started from the top with Elway, and it kind of just carried over. I wish he would have gone to a better team because now he's in Houston, and that's just, I mean, talk about the backfield there. What is Houston doing? I mean, Mark Ingram, David Johnson, and Philip Lindsay. I'm just like, why? What are you doing? I mean,
Yeah, I'm the
hey,
only
but
reason why I could see Philip Lindsay going there was the money. That's the only
that's probably
reason.
the only team that wanted to pay him because I think he's going to get 3.5.
Yeah.
Um,
Which is
so
it's
good for
unfortunate because I feel like he's gonna be in a similar situation as he was here,
yeah.
where he's not gonna be getting as many carries as he wants. He chased the money, and I'm never gonna blame a player for chasing the money, but at the same time, there was all this complaining here in Denver of, oh, I'm not getting as many carries. I want to get more carries. Blah blah blah. Oh, I ran for 1,000 yards in back-to-back seasons. Blah blah blah. Why would he bring in Melvin Gordon? and then you turn around and you go join a team who you're going to be in a similar situation with. So and look, maybe there's just no team that's going to offer that, what he wants, which is probably true. And maybe that's the best chance that he has to become the number one guy. So maybe, but it's weird. It's a weird decision to go there. But I hope he does well. I hope he proves people wrong. I hope he proves me wrong. But if his name wasn't Phillip Lindsay and he wasn't from Colorado, I honestly don't think we'd even be talking about him right now.
I agree with that. There's a sense that it's hometown field, and I think for him it was a lot about chasing the money. This is a guy who's had already dealt with some injury issues. He's a slider back, smaller back. He's got to accumulate as much money as he can,
Right?
Quickly, because you don't know how long his career. I mean, we're seeing Christian McCaffrey. I mean, he's been in the league 3 or 4 years. He got that big payday, but now last year he was plagued with injuries, and that's just a position that's just plagued by injuries. So I don't blame him for taking the money. It's going to be a weird team to be with, but honestly, when I look at David Johnson and Mark Ingram, like, do I think they're that much better than Phillip Lindsay? I wouldn't be shocked if he's the 1 or the 2 back and he's getting 10 to 20 touches a game.
Yeah, well, I would take Phillip Lindsay over both of those guys. So, it's not going to be a situation where it's easily he's the number one guy. I mean, those guys are going to be getting carries. Like, it's going to be not just a position battle. I think throughout the year, it's going to be there's not going to be a 1, 2, 3. It's going to just be all split between all 3 of them. So I don't think I think he gets the same amount of carries as he did probably last year.
The thing, too, the ripple effect with the Broncos is, okay, now you move on from Phillip Lindsay. Now that clearly says to Melvin Gordon, you're the guy.
But he's suspended.
Exactly.
So they're going to go ahead and take a running back in the draft.
That's what I'm thinking. And I know they signed Boone, but I would love me some Travis Etienne. I don't know where his stock will be.
I don't think you're going to get either Travis Etienne or Najee Harris. Look, because we can get to the signings on the defensive side, because other than Phillip Lindsay, there hasn't been a move on the offensive side, which I've said in the past, the plan that I would, if I were running them, I would spend all the money, which they had a lot of money in free agency, or just a lot of cap space in general. I would spend all that money on defense. You have the weapons on offense already. I would take the shot at quarterback. And I think they're lined up to where the whole Deshaun Watson situation, I just don't think anything's going to happen at this point anymore, unfortunately, with what's going on with Deshaun Watson. Personally, we won't get into it. I hope it's not true. But at this point, he's not going to get traded. I wouldn't be shocked. You don't need a corner. I could see them taking Micah Parsons, but I think it's either Micah Parsons at 9 if he's there, or they're trading up and they're taking a quarterback. Because all this talk about drafting a corner, if you draft a corner, it's a wasted pick, at least for this year and probably next year. Because you are now at 5 corners. You got your 5. You're good.
I wouldn't know if I'd say wasted, because you have to think Fuller's on a 1-year deal.
True. That's why I'm saying at least
will be a free agent next year.
At least this year. That's what I'm saying. It's a wasted pick for this year. So I would rather why not draft a corner next year then?
Well, I mean, we'll see if the corner talent is as good it is, at least at the top next year as this year. I wouldn't prefer corner at this point.
Right.
I think for me, I'm leaning now either linebacker. Quarterback is just weird.
But see, here's the thing. When you look at the linebacker class this year, there is Micah Parsons. But the thing about Micah Parsons is that I watched a video about these top 10 guys, And the thing about Micah Parsons is he can do a lot of things really well, but he's not great at anything. So he's not a great pass rusher. So he's listed as an outside linebacker. I don't think he's going to be a great outside linebacker. And the inside, I think he's kind of just he's good at everything. He's not great at anything. Is that a guy that you want to take in the top 10 at 9? I just look, if it's a position need. So do you take Micah Parsons and you say, hey, we need you to play on the inside because we don't need you on the outside? Because you got your 2 outside linebackers. So you got Vaughn, you got Bradley Chubb. Like, you got a couple guys behind both of those guys as well. We've talked about that already. And that we thought they were going to let Vaughn go. And they were going to elevate, I'm blanking on his name.
Who?
Outside linebacker, right behind Vaughn.
Malik Reed?
Yeah, Malik Reed, who had a really good year last year, right? You thought we were going to elevate him. So now you don't need an outside linebacker because you got depth there now too because you kept Vaughn. So the only really position that you need defensively is that inside linebacker, and I would say interior defensive line. But again, there's no one on the interior defensive line that you can take at 9. And with Micah Parsons, I don't know if it's a great fit. Like, it's a position of need because he's a linebacker and you can move him around. But it's one of those situations where are you taking someone at 9 for need or just best available? Because at best available, you might as well just take a corner. But then it's kind of like, well, don't need a corner. He's not going to play this year. You can find other guys. So it's either trade down, take Micah Parsons for a position need, which could go badly because I don't know if he really fits. And then, or you trade up and you go for it. You go for one of your quarterbacks that you love. And that third pick is going to be available.
Peyton has been telling us, I think from the beginning, if I'm not mistaken, it's BPA. He's not going to draft for need. It's going to be BPA, which I think it should be.
Yeah, that's what it should be. But then at that point, at 9, it's going to be a corner. Or maybe you take an offensive lineman. Maybe someone like Penei Sewell drops, or Slater, one of those 2 offensive tackles drop. Then you take one of them.
Linebacker, safety, and quarterback. And I guess, anytime you could get offensive line depth, I'll take it. But it just really does feel like they're gearing up for something at the quarterback position.
I have a feeling they're trading up 2-3. I think it's between them and Carolina. Miami's trading down. So who's going to take it? It's either Carolina or Denver, because I think I've kind of changed my mind on this Atlanta thing. I think they're taking a quarterback because they can get out of Matt Ryan's contract next year and get out of $20 million. So I think they move off of Matt Ryan next year. You take a quarterback now, like a Trey Lance, who needs to develop for a year, and then you go with Trey Lance the next year. So that third overall pick is available with Miami, and if you want to jump a team like Atlanta and take a Trey Lance or a Justin Fields, then it's up for grabs. You swap with 9, you give up a first next year, and probably a first year after that. But again, you're spending all your money on defense. This is what I've said in the past. You spend your money on defense, you have a young offense, take the shot at quarterback, get your guy, and then with the rest of your picks, I'm taking a running back and I'm taking all defense with the rest of your picks for the next 2-3 years. I think that's how you got to play it, and I think this is the shot. Like, I think if Trey Lance stayed in college one more year, he'd be a top 2 pick next year.
I think he's the wild card right now, is Trey Lance.
Yeah, I think that's who I'm taking. That's who I'm taking.
His stock is quietly rising, and I literally just saw a tweet from Michael Girardi on this for the NFL Network. A couple scouts I know on Trey Lance. Everyone's going to talk about his arm, his physicality, and his speed. His brains are what will elevate him, and his arm isn't Josh Allen's, but it's in the conversation. Both of those scouts that Michael Girardi was talking to think Lance would be best served by at least a half season of being number 2. I think that's the name to watch. I think that's because obviously, Trevor Lawrence is most likely going to go number 1. Then you have to think it's probably Zach Wilson after that, or Justin Fields.
But Justin Fields is dropping. I'm seeing a lot of times where Justin Fields is the one falling to 7 or 8, which that won't happen. 4 quarterbacks will be taken in the top 5. It's gonna be crazy. It's 4 are going in the top 5 unless Miami doesn't pull the trigger and trade that pick, unless they can't seem to get something. But I'm telling you, Carolina, Denver, and San Fran are all fighting for that 3rd overall pick. So Miami's going to get a haul for that 3rd overall pick. They'd be stupid to trade that pick. Now, I wouldn't trade it to San Fran because you're dropping to, 16 or 14, something like that. I would take either Carolina or Denver. And by the way, San Fran was just in a Super Bowl 2 years ago. So the future first-round picks probably won't be as good as a Carolina or even Denver. Like, if I'm Miami, I'm looking at Carolina probably. But if Denver can sneak in there, then it'll go Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, and then I think Atlanta takes quarterback at 4.
These guys are going to take a quarterback, aren't they? Denver's going to draft a quarterback.
It all depends on Miami. That's if you can get up to 3. Because what I'm saying though is those top 4 guys are going in the top 5. You need to trade up. If they stay at 9. You're looking at Mac Jones. I'd stay away. I'd stay away. Exactly. So, but that's what I'm saying. 5 quarterbacks will be taken. Probably 5 will be taken in top 10. It's one of the crazy. It's going to be the craziest quarterback draft class probably ever, as far as where these guys are being taken. I mean, there's a chance that we could see the top 4 picks go quarterback, and then Mac Jones goes in the top 10, which in any previous year, Mac Jones does not go in the first round. It's a weird year. This is the year to do it. If you're going to do it, you have to do it this year.
Yeah. I'm going back to my apprehension about drafting a quarterback just because you're bringing him in under one regime. But you know what? I think at this point now, I think Peyton is giving, now there's no excuse, right? Because of what he's done in free agent. Now there's really no excuse for Vic Fangio.
He's building up the defense to where it's like
he's giving him all the pieces that, hey, boom.
He's doing exactly what I would have done, which is keep Von Miller and keep this defense together, go all out on the defense in free agency, spend all your money. Your offense is young. Go take a shot. It's exactly what I said.
He's building no excuse, but now you're at a point to where it's like if Vic Fangio at the bare minimum doesn't win 8 games next year, I don't think he's back. Even if he does win 8 games next year, I think he's still probably fired. Mm-hmm. And that's just what it is. Because now he's going to have a defense that will star Kyle Fuller, who is now an all-pro corner who played most of his career under Vic Fangio, who succeeded there. You bring in a guy in Ronald Darby who a lot of people like, but he's had some injury issues, but he claims he's fixed that due to how he's changed his offseason approach. So we'll see. But if you solidified, the Broncos could have possibly switched the greatest weakness or one of the greatest weaknesses into a strength just like that in the snap of a finger. Because now you have those 2 guys, Michael Ojemudia, who showed some flashes last year that he can be a solid player. I don't know if he will be a star or anything, but he shows he can be solid. You still have Bryce Callahan, who,
by the way, played well when he was healthy.
Exactly,
he's a good slot corner.
And Bryce Callahan, I mean, if he can stay healthy, good solid corner. You bring back Justin Simmons, who I think and I don't think Justin Simmons is the best safety.
No, but they had money. And
he's a top 10 safety.
Here's the thing: if I'm George, and if I'm George Payton right now, or at least before, and I'm looking at this defense, I'm saying this defense can easily be fixed with the amount of money that they have. You keep Von Miller, and you have Bradley Chubb for a full year. You have depth with those linebackers, at least on the outside with Malik Reed. Now it's a matter of, okay, what do we do on the inside of that defensive line? That's an issue, but there's depth later on in the drive. You can get a guy later on, and
Yeah. Oh, I think I like what you have starting though with Shelby and Draymond Jones.
right. So exactly. So then in the draft, you just fill in the depth. So I, you keep Justin Simmons. Now the other thing though is, what do you do at the other safety position? That's another hole right now.
A lot of people are saying, you know, with how the safety market is right now in
Kareem
free
Jackson
agency,
could easily be back on a 1-year deal.
Kareem just come back
Yeah.
at just a reduced price. Like they asked him to restructure, he denied it. He goes into free agency. There's not a lot of biters. I mean, we saw, who was it? The guy from Minnesota, Harrison. I can't think. I'm blanking on his last name, but he signed like a smaller deal as well. So
Yeah.
could Kareem come back on a 1-year deal? Maybe like a 1-year, $8 million or something like that. But then all that to say though, you look at the offensive side, the only glaring weakness is the quarterback.
Right.
Because
and I would say running back. You need a running back to fill in for Melvin Gordon while he's out.
Sure, but I think you feel comfortable at least with, well, if he gets suspended, which he probably will since the video's out.
Yeah.
But he didn't get charged. He got acquitted of that. But he'll probably still get suspended. I would say probably at least 2 games.
They're going to draft a running back, but again, you can grab a running back in
right
the 4th, 5th. Trey Sermon for Ohio State, by the way, I think that's a great fit. If you can go get him,
you feel comfortable about the offensive side. Like you have each position, you have talent. If
you're good.
Stays there, you bring back Juwan James, so theoretically your tackles are taken care of. Reisner, he had a down last year after a really good first year, but I mean solid there. Glasgow, if he can stay healthy. You liked what you saw in spots by Cushenberry. Maybe, you know, he takes a step up, but I mean, Cortland Sutton, we're assuming he'll be back to himself. Jerry Jeudy, if he spent enough time on the jugs machine with Michael Porter Jr. this offseason, learning how to catch the football again. I mean, you like what you have there. Tim Patrick, did they
put a tender on Tim Patrick? So, I would assume he's back.
So he'll be back, and Tim Patrick is a solid wide receiver.
And then KJ Hamler in year 2 with KJ Hamler,
right? And then Fant, and you know, if Albert O can be healthy. The only glaring weakness is the quarterback.
That's what I've been saying. Like,
what's the excuse not to win at least 8 games next year?
Well, and here's the thing. I will say this. I think Vic Fangio with George Payton has 2 years. I think he's bought himself.
I think he has 1.
I'll say that if you bring in a rookie quarterback, I think let's hypothetically say the defense works out. It's a top 5 defense. And say they draft Trey Lance, who's more of a developmental guy, then I think there's going to be a little bit more leash. Now, also, though, I'm thinking, look, we've seen rookie quarterbacks come into the league and light it up. Justin Herbert just did it. Joe Burrow was doing it. Kyler Murray did it. Like, these quarterbacks, it's no longer, you need to give them 2-3 years. They can do, if they're good enough, they can do it the rookie year, or at the latest year 2, and that's why I've been out on Drew Lock. So, and that's, I would assume, why George Payton is out on Drew Lock, if he is, and if they do go ahead and take one of these quarterbacks, then they're basically banking on whatever quarterback they take, whoever they love, can do what Justin Herbert did, and if they can, then this is easily a playoff team. Now, if they take Trey Lance and say it takes half the season for him to develop and get things going, and say you start in your first 8-9 games, you're 4-5 or 3-5, whatever, but then you finish off the season, you go 5-3, you go 8-8, or is there 17 games this year? Did they do that? Is that okay? So say you finish the season really well, you go 9-8. But you started off really slow because of that rookie quarterback. But your defense finishes in the top 5, and your rookie quarterback is looking like Justin Herbert.
How about this?
Then it's different.
Has to get them to the wild card. He has to get.
Is there 7 teams in the playoffs again?
Yeah, there's the extra team, right? So
that's staying. So
I think so. So he has to listen. I think he has to win at least 8 games. And even then, that's not a guarantee. But I also
No,
think
because that's technically a losing record.
if he right, well, yeah, if it's a 17 game, okay, he has to win at least 9 games. But even then, I don't think that's a guarantee. But I think at the bare minimum, to guarantee that he is back next year, he has to make it to the playoffs.
I think it depends on the quarterback.
I don't think so.
If it's Drew Lock, and Drew Lock doesn't work out, I'm not blaming that on Vic Fangio. Now if we're seeing dumb decisions by Vic Fangio again, like we saw last year and the year before that, and those things aren't changing, then yeah, he's out. No matter what the quarterback is doing. But if he starts to kind of figure the head coaching job out, if he starts to figure out how to be a head coach, and it's more about the quarterback play, they say they keep Drew Lock and he sucks, and it's the same crap last year, then I'm not blaming that on Vic Fangio. I'm blaming that on George Paton for not taking the shot.
Yeah, I still think even with,
if you're gonna take a shot, if you're planning on taking a shot in the next 3 years, you'd be stupid not to take the shot this year. It's right there. It's right in front of you. These guys are good. Take them. And look, it's not like you're putting one of these quarterbacks in a bad situation like the Jets. Honestly, I feel bad for Zach Wilson because he's gonna struggle his first year, and probably his first 2 years. They might break him like Sam Darnold, and same with Trevor Lawrence because they haven't done much. Now, if they go out and get him receivers, and maybe, but if I'm the Broncos, look, you got talent on this offense. Whoever you bring in, they will most likely succeed because you already have weapons on this team. You have the roster for them to succeed. If they don't succeed, that's on them. It's not on your roster. It's not like Zach Wilson or Trevor Lawrence. If they don't succeed, well, those teams are crap. Because those two teams can easily break Trevor Lawrence, easily break Zach Wilson like Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I just don't know if there's a whole lot of leeway for Vic Fangio because this defense should be at the bare minimum top 10 with the talent that they have.
What I'm saying though is if they're top 5, I think his job is safe as long as.
I mean, but if they're top 5 and they don't make it to the playoffs, then what does that actually mean?
Then it depends on the quarterback, right? If you have a top 5 defense,
it has to be a disaster. Like if Drew Lock is an average, I think if he's average, this is assuming that Drew Lock is the quarterback. If Drew Lock is average, if he's what you could get from Alex Smith, Ryan Fitzpatrick, those type of guys around that level, then this team should, at the bare minimum, be in the playoffs. So,
as a 7 seed,
if Drew Lock is obviously a disaster, then okay. And if you bring in a rookie quarterback, then all right. But even then, I mean, even if you bring a rookie quarterback in, I mean, this should still be a good team, though. I mean, the defense is solid. There's talent around the guy as long as they build to the strengths of the quarterback, which again, that's on the coaching staff. So if they don't, then that's another reflection on a bad coaching staff. I don't know. I think this is the hot seat that he's on this year. He's year 3. His defense is built up. Now, obviously, too, we got to keep in mind because the Broncos were just completely decimated by injuries. We're hoping that that's not the case this year. And if most of his defense stays healthy, I think at the bare minimum he has to win 9 games and he has to make it to the playoffs to keep his job. Other than that, then I think it's time to move on. If you're George Paton and you draft a quarterback, now I was worried that if you draft a quarterback under one regime and you bring in another regime and they don't like the guy, but I think it's now to a point where George Paton will bring in a guy who lines up with his vision.
Right.
It would be counterintuitive to bring in somebody that doesn't like your quarterback that you draft if they do draft a quarterback. So I don't know. At this point, I'm kind of open to anything. If they took a quarterback, okay. If we ran it back with Drew Lock, okay. Because I think Drew Lock has that type of personality where he's like, okay, I hear what you're saying. Mm-hmm. We know, according to Tim Patrick, that he's taking things more seriously now. So, okay. Actually, I'd be fine. If we draft a quarterback, fine. That's new hope. That's another quarterback, something to be excited about. If it's Drew Lock for year 3, I'm concerned to an extent, but you know what? It's another year. We know Drew Lock has the talent. Now it's just about putting it together. And we know that this Broncos offense is talented. So if he can just be average or above average. He doesn't have to be great. He doesn't have to be top 10. If he could be just a top 15 quarterback in the league next year, this team should easily make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because when I look at the Raiders, I don't think the Raiders are better than the Broncos right now. When I look at the Chargers, I don't think the Chargers are better than the Broncos
They have a better
right now.
quarterback. That's about it.
Sure. You could. I wouldn't mind someone saying it's probably a push between the Chargers and the Broncos because the Chargers defense. You're gonna get Derwin James back healthy, hopefully. Chris Harris is there another year. I mean, they still have a solid defense. Joey Bosa, Ingram seems like he's kind of taken a step back as a player, like he might be turning that corner in age. So, but offensively, they have some weapons there as well. Obviously the Chiefs are the gold standard, but I mean, you see the Chiefs. I mean, their 2 starting tackles from last year are now gone. Now they bring in a really good offensive lineman. I'm blanking on who they brought in, but you get him in there. But there's still question marks at the tackle position, I think, for those guys. So. And the Chiefs, we know they're not completely invincible.
No.
That if you have a defense that can hang with them, which I think the Broncos should be able to, now it's really going to come down to can they do what the Bucs did to Travis Kelce, which I don't think they have the cover linebackers for. But it's not like the Chiefs are head and shoulders above the Broncos. I don't think. I think they're a better football team for sure. But it's not like the Chiefs 6 feet of space and then the Broncos, and maybe it's like 2 feet of space. 3 feet of space. So this should be a playoff team next year. And luckily in the NFL, you can turn things around quickly. And now the Broncos have that opportunity. Now when you're at 9, there's a lot of open ideas here. You can trade back and gather assets. You can try and get a guy for the future. I think the Broncos are in a really good spot. Now they just have to find a way not to blow it, which they've been doing a lot lately. They find themselves in good positions and then they blow it. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason, interesting season. I want to get more in depth before we wrap up today on Vaughn and Simmons in particular getting picked up. Obviously, Vaughn gets his option picked up. He's going to get that $18 million fully guaranteed. I think it's fully guaranteed. I think it's like a $7 million. But I'll have to go back and look at the exact details. But so let's see. The Broncos elected to exercise an option in Miller's contract earlier this week that guarantees $7 million of Miller's 17.5 base salary. Okay, so $7 million is that guaranteed part, and it's close to 18 for his base salary. Did you like the move of them bringing Vaughn back?
If you asked me a month ago, I would have said no. But because of what they did around the defense, I agree. I agree with the move. They had the cap space to do it, and not only to because I thought maybe a month ago I was like, well, if you keep Vaughn, I don't know if you're able to go ahead and fill in the rest of the team how you want. But if they, by the way, I don't know if you saw Deontay Spencer's tweet. I have a feeling Kareem Jackson is coming back.
22, unless he's talking about CJ Anderson. CJ's a little big these days.
Yeah.
A little bit bigger than he used to be.
I have a feeling Kareem Jackson's coming back. So the way George Payton did this, keeping Vaughn made a lot of sense. It made a lot of sense. So look. Here's what George Payton is doing. Here's what George Payton's doing. He's saying, okay, I'm stuck with Vic Fangio. I'm going to give Vic Fangio every reason to be successful.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to bring in his guys. I'm going to give him every opportunity to make this defense what it should be.
To make the playoffs.
Right. And then I am going to go ahead and do what I want to do with the offense. And I'm going to take my shot. I think that's what it's lining up to be. And so if you get rid of Von Miller, but then bring in all these other guys, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Right? So because you could have brought in another pass rusher, but is that pass rusher as good as Von Miller? Even though Von Miller is 32 or 30, 32?
I mean, statistically, Malik Reed was as good as Von Miller last year.
True, but you have Malik Reed already on your team. It's not necessarily. How did they win Super Bowl 50? It wasn't just because they had Von Miller, but they had DeMarcus Ware, they had Malik Jackson, they had Derek Wolfe, they had they had a bunch of guys who can rush the passer, not just two, not just one. They had a bunch.
They had an amazing secondary,
and they had amazing secondary. Right, true. But what I'm saying though is, it's not just It's not just one guy. Look at Tampa Bay. They had a bunch of guys who can rush the passer. So you already have Malik Reed, and these other pass rushers are getting 16, 15, 16, 17 million a year. So what are we doing here? Let's keep Von Miller. He already knows the system. He's a Super Bowl MVP winner. Is he as good as maybe those other pass rushers making that much money? Maybe not. We don't know because he's been injured. We really have no idea. So and look, you have Malik Reed, who just had 8.5 sacks. So if Von doesn't work out, you still got a guy behind him. So I think it made a lot of sense because of what you were doing around the team and because of how much cap space you had and the willingness to spend all of that cap space on defense.
Yeah.
So it made sense if you went that route. If you went the other route and saying, well, you know what? I'm going to screw over Vic Fangio. Going to make sure that, this defense is meh. He's going to go 6-10 or 6-11, whatever. Going to go ahead and fire him, and then I'm going to restart my rebuild. Then it wouldn't make sense to bring back Von Miller.
Well, I think one thing we have to keep in mind too, though, is okay. So now it's Von, Fuller, Bryce Callahan are all essentially on 1-year deals.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
You're giving Vic Fangio 1 year.
If it doesn't work out,
goodbye.
Then it's like, okay, we're completely cleaning house. You have, a cornerstone in Justin Simmons locked up.
Bradley Chubb.
You have, Shelby Harris.
Well, I guess you can make a choice. You can make a choice on Bradley Chubb, but you can make him a cornerstone piece if you would like.
Sure, but they're gonna have to. That's a good question because they're gonna have to decide on his 5th-year option here soon.
Yeah.
Which I think
we'll see.
It's in the coming months, right? That they have to decide on that because he's going in year 4, right? Or year 3.
Wait,
he's going into year 3.
He's going into year 3, so I think you have one. Wait, where Bradley?
Or is he 4?
That was the same. That was the same year as Josh Allen.
Second year, Josh Allen. Third year was so he's going. He's going in
year 4. So yeah, they can make it. They will have to make a choice by when are those 5th-year options up?
I want to say here in the coming months. 5th-year option. NFL. Let's see. 5th-year options must be picked up prior to May 3rd of a player's season, 4th season.
So you got 2 months. Or not even.
Months. Do you pick up Bradley Chubb's option? I think you pick it up.
I think you have to. I think you'd be stupid not to. But it's not like it's a lot of money anyways. You can move on. But again, what you're doing, though, is essentially saying, I would say Bradley Chubb is like a half cornerstone piece where it's like he's not getting a ton of money. You're going to have to pay him a lot more once he's up. So you do pick up that 5th-year option. So now you have 2 more years with Bradley Chubb. Depending on what he does this year, then you pay him next year, right? And if not, then he's a guy that you can either trade because he's not a lot of money. You can flat out cut him, whatever. That 5th year, it's not a big deal. So yeah, you have Justin Simmons, you have Shelby Harris, you have Bradley Chubb, OJ Mudia. As far as who's staying, Malik Reed, possibly. As far as who is, these are George Payton's, like, I'm keeping these 5 guys. Everyone else, literally everyone else is leaving. AJ Johnson, all the corners.
When we go through these contracts, Denver probably should draft a quarterback.
Yeah, this is your year to see if this defense and Vic Fangio is worth keeping around. I'm telling you, it's exactly what I said 2 months ago, where I would have gone the route of spending all the money on your defense, giving it 1 more year, but making sure that you go out and get your guy. It makes so much sense. But the problem is that you're at pick 9, and there's other teams that want a quarterback. I'm
Yeah.
not. I'm out on Mac. I don't want Mac Jones. So you have to move up, and you have to move up to pick 3. That means you're giving up 3 firsts, including this year. You're giving up possibly 2 seconds. Maybe you throw in Drew Lock. I don't know if Miami wants. Miami probably doesn't care about Drew Lock. So at that point, essentially, if you give up all these picks, you then flip Drew Lock for maybe a 3rd, and you at least get a pick back.
I don't know if you have to get to 3, but I'd say at the bare minimum 5.
I think Atlanta's taking quarter. I think 4 go in the top 4. I think Atlanta's taking one. I think Atlanta's taking whoever's available.
Because I think it's Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson.
I think Trey Lance is the 3rd.
I don't know. Does Atlanta take Trey Lance or Justin Fields?
Well, they would take whichever one's available.
Well, what if they're both there?
I think someone takes. I think Miami's trading that pick. Miami would be stupid not to trade that pick because you could get a lot for that pick.
I just think it makes sense to take a quarterback. The more we break this down,
I think you have to move up to 3.
Well, you just get 5 years of him on a rookie deal.
Exactly.
And you think about it, you're gonna have to account for Cortland Sutton's coming up here soon, after next year, I think. Noah Fant. Well, Noah Fant, you'll have the 5th-year option on.
Yeah.
But still, that would be within that 5-year time frame that you would have to pay Noah Fant.
Right.
Jerry Jeudy would be on the tail end of that, but Jerry Jeudy, you'll have a 5th-year option with him as well. So it just makes sense to draft a quarterback this year.
Because you don't want to risk waiting a year and have that class. Say you go with Drew Lock, he's average, you go 8 and 9. And all of a sudden you're like, well, this defense is top 5. We have all the weapons. We really need a quarterback. We know what Drew Lock is officially. We're done with him. All of a sudden it's too late. Because in order to get a quarterback, you're going to need the number 1 or number 2 overall pick.
And you're at 13 or
exactly.
12
So you lose your chance. This is your chance. The problem is that every team knows it's their chance this year. That's the problem. So you got teams like Carolina, who's at 8, Denver at 9, San Fran, wherever they are. I'm looking at a mock draft where they have San Fran moving up to 3 or 4. Like,
they'd have to give up a ton.
There's too many teams that need quarterbacks right now. Like, go down the list of all these teams. I mean, going in order, Jacksonville needs a quarterback. The Jets need a quarterback. Carolina needs a quarterback. San Fran needs a quarterback. Who knows? Philly could take a quarterback if they wanted to. Detroit, if they're not all in on Jared Goff and they can move on from Jared Goff in a year or 2, they could take a quarterback. Miami could take a quarterback if they don't love Tua. Denver could take a quarterback. The Giants could take a quarterback if they're not fully all in on Jones over there. Atlanta could take a quarterback because they can get off of Matt Ryan next year. Minnesota probably won't take a quarterback because they can't really get out of that contract right now. New England needs a quarterback. And let's see, next page. The Raiders, probably not. Washington needs a quarterback. Chicago needs a quarterback. Indy has our guy. Tennessee has their guy.
All right.
Yeah, they need a quarterback. So going down the list, New Orleans, by the way, needs. They'll go with Winston.
So once you get past 12, I don't think anybody's trading back.
Well, no, but what I'm saying, right? But what I'm saying though is there is a ton of teams that need a quarterback, and out of all of the years to take a quarterback, you're literally 6 deep.
Well, and you can argue too, the year that Denver probably should have taken a quarterback the last time, they didn't. They took Bradley Chubb, and where has that gotten you now? Now, to be fair, like if you want to play devil's advocate for that, well, how many of those guys ended up working out?
Yeah, but I could argue though Sam Darnold goes to another team and he plays excellent because he's on a good team.
Maybe I don't. I think that's a stretch. But I mean, look,
Solid Tannehill.
Josh Rosen,
that one definitely didn't work out.
Relevant, Baker Mayfield, even though was on a playoff team, there's still questions about Baker Mayfield. Mm-hmm. Then you had Sam Darnold. Now obviously Lamar Jackson went in that class, but playoff contender.
They should have took him out. They should have took him. They should have moved back into the first round and took him.
Who was the other quarterback that got drafted?
Josh Allen.
Josh Allen. So one, well, I mean, I guess 3 of those guys are on playoff teams, but 2, you can make the argument that can they take their team to the next level, and that's Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson. We think Josh Allen could take Buffalo to the next level, but I mean, that was man.
But here's the thing: all 3 of those quarterbacks out of the 5 were all in the playoffs this past season.
Correct.
I'll take it. You look, you got 4 quarterbacks, at least in these top 4. You got 4 of them, right? And if you have all the weapons, I would say one of them probably flames out. You got a 75% chance to pick the right guy. Now, the one that flames out might be because he's on the Jets or he's on, a crap team like Carolina, who may not have the weapons to help him out, and he ends up flaming out because it just, they don't have the guys around him.
Man, if the Broncos would have just lost to the Jets and the Patriots, we could be sitting at 3, and we wouldn't even have this issue right now.
Yeah, well, that's why I was rooting so hard for them to lose.
Well, that's why I said after the Jets game, let's tank this thing. Let's do it. Tank it.
That Jets game, by the way, was huge because the Jets were winning that game.
They were. And so New England had a chance to win down the stretch too. Unbelievable. I think the more we broke this down, I think Denver has to take a quarterback.
It's the smartest thing to do, but the problem is that a lot of teams need a quarterback, and a lot of teams will be moving up. So you can't stay at 9. It's that simple. You cannot stay at 9.
If you don't get a quarterback, you have to hope and pray that Drew Lock turned a corner.
Yeah.
Or
you take Sam Darnold.
I wouldn't do that.
But that's the only other option. If you miss out on a quarterback in this draft class,
trading for is Deshaun Watson, and that's a hairy situation. So
right, and look, here's the thing: the Deshaun Watson situation changed everything for Denver. Because what have we been hearing over the last week? Oh, Denver's the team. It's Denver and San Fran. As far as what teams he'd be now, it's kind of it's been a little like, well, I don't know, you never know, whatever. But it made a lot of sense for teams like San Fran and Denver to go for Deshaun Watson. Why? Because they have the weapons around a quarterback, and they just need the quarterback, and they have the defense, by the way. So it made a lot of sense. But because of this situation with Deshaun Watson, and by the way, I hope it's not true, but if it is, Deshaun Watson's not getting traded, and he might not even be playing next year. Either way. Yeah. So now that Deshaun Watson's out of the picture until this gets resolved, which won't get resolved until after the draft, you have not guarantees, but you have more guaranteed, I guess, than Deshaun Watson at this point. So you have to make the move.
Yeah. Lastly, before we close, Justin Simmons, 4 years, $61 million, $35 million guaranteed. He is the highest paid safety in the league now. $15 million signing bonus this year. I mean,
it's a lot of money for a safety.
I really like Justin Simmons. I do. I think he's a really good player. I don't know if he's a top 3 safety. I don't know if he's top 5. I think he's definitely top 10. Like he's really like.
He's like,
I like it for him.
At worst, he's like 6 or 7.
Right. He's a really good football player, and when you have really good football players, you should try to do everything you can to keep really good football players.
Yeah.
I'm happy he's staying. The contract, I was like, highest paid safety, okay, but I don't know, man. He's making 15.
Here's the thing.
Essentially,
it's how long? 4 years.
4 years.
Okay, well, you're probably stuck with them for 3. You could probably get out of that contract that 4th year.
No guarantee in the 24.
Yeah, so it's back to what we just said. What George Payton did was there's a lot of these contracts he can get off after year 1, and the rest he can get off of all these contracts within 3 years. So what he knows he has a lot of leash, right? He has 6 years. So if you can get out of if it doesn't work out with this group that is currently constructed, not counting whoever they take in this upcoming draft, because that's obviously George Payton's guys, but the guys that aren't his guys, he's made it so that it's a 3-year window. So by year 4, there's a chance that not a single one of these players that's currently on this roster right now is on this team.
Yeah.
There's a huge chance that that's a possibility. Other than maybe Jerry Jeudy is because he was the last year's draft. Like, you know, a couple of those guys. Maybe Noah Fant. But he can get off of Noah Fant. He can get off of Cortland Sutton if he wants. If Cortland Sutton just never gets back to what he wants or what he was. Maybe Jerry Jeudy still can't catch a ball. He can get off of Jerry Jeudy because it's a rookie contract. So there's not a single player on this team that he is stuck with past 3 years.
I swear, if Jerry Jeudy can't catch this season, I'm telling you what.
But
MPJ's been a little bit better these past few games, so I haven't had to tweet, but I'm telling you, man.
George Payton did this thing brilliantly. Like, it was, and by the way, I'm calling him George Payton right now because he did it really well. It's very smartly. Like, he can, because he knows he has 6 years. So these first 3 years is more of, okay, well, let's see if these guys, if I really want these guys to stick around. Mainly the first 2, because he could probably get off of that Justin Simmons contract after the first 2 years, really. So it's more of, let's give Vic Fangio 1 year. The rest of his guys that we're bringing in are on 1-year deals. We can get off of this, and if it doesn't work out, see ya. We're going to rebuild completely and completely start over. But this is the last year of the whole Band-Aid thing, right? This is the last year. If it works, great. But this is the last chance. And it shows. All of these contracts he can get out of, other than what? Yeah, because Shelby Harris signed, what, a 3-year deal? He can get out of that after 2 years. So it's 1 year with the cornerstones being 2 or 3 years, and then he can create his own if needed. He did it. He did it exactly how I would do it, and that makes me very happy. Now, if it doesn't work out, then, well, whoops. But yeah. he basically made it a situation where year 1 is the Band-Aid, the last Band-Aid year to see, let's see what works, let's see what doesn't, and then we'll move on from what doesn't, and let's restart if it completely fails. But he can get out of this thing after year 1 completely.
Might be time to get excited about Broncos football again.
Well,
just maybe.
I'm not going to be excited until Drew Lock is either works out or Drew Lock is no longer the guy.
You don't get to be excited. You were kicked off the Broncos fan train. You switched allegiances. You're a Chiefs fan. There's no coming back. You come back to this.
I'm
side.
Not a Chiefs fan.
No,
I was rooting for them in the Super Bowl because I didn't want to see Tom Brady win another one.
No. You walked the plank. We pushed you off. You were swallowed by the fishies. That's just what it is. You're a Kansas City Chiefs fan now. There's no coming back for you. You're even wearing red right now. Unbelievable. You're just unbelievable. Where are you going? Yeah, take a walk. Take a seat. Oh boy. What do we got going on here? He just brought in his dog. Goodness, she is huge.
Oh my god. Okay. Don't lick the mic. Ugh.
She is huge now. Did she just completely bypass the puppy stage? What is she, a husky?
She's a white shepherd. She's gonna be big.
Yeah, apparently. Golly, starting at forward for the Denver Nuggets.
Well, hey, they need a power forward right now, so it works out.
Tell Aaron I said hi. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We thank you guys for tuning in. For Chiefs fan Brandon Stoll on the other side.
I'm not a Chiefs fan. Stop it.
I'm Stephen Priest. This has been the Behind the Glass Sports Podcast. Catch you guys next weekend.
Jeez. Okay. Bye.